Are you ready for down-to-earth reporting and brutal honesty? The Joe Rossano Show is next.
I'm a mover and a shaker, and I'm everything you're not. I'm the winner, you're the loser, and I'll take you for all you got.
Welcome to the Joe Rossano Show. Hi, I'm Joe Rossano, where our mission is to lay out the issues in a down-to-earth fashion using brutal honesty. No more mainstream media. And why? Because they all have agendas. And they all got it wrong. Please stay tuned for the Raw and Brutal segment where I'm going to clear my conscience and the consciences of all Donald Trump supporters and give people like Michael Moore, George Soros, Secretary Clinton, and President Obama the opportunity to help me help them. To the Outset segment. Why Donald Trump won and why Hillary Clinton lost. For those of you still shocked, stunned, in need of therapy, hot chocolate, crayons, and trauma dogs to accept that your candidate didn't win the election, well, let me help you out. I will begin with why Hillary Clinton lost. My dear friends and fellow Americans, you can't, and let me repeat, you can't refer to millions of Americans as racist, bigots, sexists, homophobes, and my personal favorite, a basket full of irredeemable deplorables because you don't agree with them and think they're going to vote for you. Was there a hidden Donald Trump vote out there, Madam Secretary? You're darn right there was. A lesson you're learning right about now. Yes, when pollsters called people, they lied and said, I'm voting for Hillary, when in fact they had no such intention. And why? For the simple reason that you can't insult someone in the most negative ways as you, your friends in the media, and just about everyone on the left day in and day out, and expect them not to go into their little private voting booth and pull the lever for Donald Trump. This, Madam Secretary, was the fatal mistake that you and your campaign made prior to November 8th, 2016. I'll bet you didn't see that coming. How could you, when you could give a gee whiz about any of them in the first place? Well, guess what? It would appear, considering you lost Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, maybe you should have. And all the Jay-Z, Chers, Gagas couldn't seem to keep Humpty Dumpty from having that great fall, now could they? It seems that every time the left doesn't get their way, or their 7th place trophy, eureka, it becomes another peaceful protest that lasts about 17 seconds until, of course, property gets destroyed, buildings get set on fire, and people get killed. And guess what? The folks in the aforementioned states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are a tad bit tired of that nonsense, so they voted for Trump. Lastly, my dear friends and fellow Americans, before I get to why Donald Trump won the election, let's not forget the secretary was in fact extremely careless with classified material. Took millions of dollars from Wall Street, which she claims she despises, and millions of dollars in foreign donations from government to employ the death penalty for homosexuals. Probably didn't help matters. Oh, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz magically resigned because the almighty respect the election results members of the DNC rigged the election against Bernie Sanders. Why Donald Trump won? Donald Trump used his brilliance as a businessman to tap into a part of the electorate that Secretary Clinton mostly ignored. The 35 million high school educated men and women, which make up 35% of the vote, felt there was no movement for them, and they were the forgotten Americans. It was that sector of the electorate that Donald Trump really tapped into. And when Donald Trump vowed to build the wall, stop the gang violence, and restore law and order, the left, of course, called him a racist, which in turn called that sector of the voting bloc racist also. Well, obviously, they didn't appreciate that very much. However, that's not why they voted for Donald Trump. They voted for Donald Trump because they lost their houses, their pensions, their jobs, and felt no one cared about them like folks care about African Americans, Latinos, etc. So guess what? They went heavily for Donald Trump. Mr. Trump received 68 of high school educated white men, while in 2012 Mitt Romney only 55%. Lastly, Donald Trump made it clear to the silent majority that it's okay to say Merry Christmas again. We'll be right back for the Raw and the Brutal segment where I'm going to issue a warning and extend an olive branch to our friend Michael Moore. Stay tuned.
I'm a mover and a shaker, and I'm everything you're not. not. I'm the winner, you're the loser, and I'll take you for all you got.
Welcome back to the Raw and Brutal segment. On November 13th, 2016, courtesy of BillO'Reilly.com, Michael Moore said this.
Do you think the people's message is being heard?
Oh, you haven't even begun to see how it's being heard. This demonstration, how many are they predicting or how many are they saying are here right now?
13,000. Thousands.
Yeah.
They expect up to 16.
Yeah, well over 10,000 for sure. Probably upwards of 20,000. Listen to that.
I have a question for you, though.
Listen to that.
If they impeach Trump, then they'll get
So, this is going to be one of the smallest demonstrations.
You think they're going to get bigger?
Oh, are you kidding? They're only going to get bigger. They're only going to get bigger. The majority of the people didn't vote for him. The majority of the people voted for Hillary Clinton. So, how do you think the majority of Americans feel right now?
Mr. Moore, what about the critics who say, look, we know that he's going to be in office for the next 4 years and there's nothing we can do about it?
Well, our job is to make sure he doesn't take office, and we're going to do that legally and non-violently.
How do you go about doing that?
How do you go about doing it?
How can you stop him from taking office?
We will put as many of our bodies on the line as possible to block him. If it takes right up to Inauguration Day, there'll be millions of people in the street in D.C. on Inauguration Day. Up until then, we are going to get our elected representatives to do what they need to do. We're going to talk to the electors of the Electoral College. We have a lot of states that have already voted to accept the popular vote, and the electors are required to go with the popular vote.
Michael Moore, by all means, I'm not the smartest fellow on earth. My wife will tell you that. So I will first attempt to allow President Reagan to try to talk some sense into you.
They were going to physically destroy the university. Now, why did you
negotiate many times?
Negotiate? What is to negotiate? What is?
The university is a public institution.
That's right. But the university,
for its own community and for the community of Berkeley that live around it.
All of it began the first time some of you who know better and are old enough to know better let young people think that they had the right to choose the laws they would obey as long as they were doing it in the name of social protest.
Mr. Moore, rather than insult you, because I believe that you truly think, as sad as this may sound, that you're doing the right thing here. And I think some of your causes, although I don't agree with, I do think, however, you're trying to do some good things. However, as someone on your age level, let me advise you, brother, that you are walking a thin line and skating on very thin ice. So I will make a proposal to you, and if we can't reason together, I'm going to clear my conscience and look in the mirror, Michael Moore, and say I did the best I could to prevent what grown-ups like us, who are supposed to know better, know exactly where this thing is going. I here and now request that you join me to make public appearances around the United States to advise our fellow citizens to accept the election results and unify this nation behind President-elect Donald Trump, and to end these protests, to cease and desist all acts of violence, property destruction, and disruption of the lives of innocent Americans who have no interest in your politics. Mr. Moore, I understand your desire to have our government adhere to the popular vote. However, sir, the Electoral College that was designed so small states could have their say was enacted long before you and I were born, brother. The Secretary was well aware of our election process many, many years before she and her husband, President Bill Clinton, ran for office. Mr. Trump carried the states of Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and your home state of Michigan. This nation will not stand for a reversal of the Electoral College, nor are we going to keep on voting until Secretary Clinton wins the election. Mr. Moore, I ask you to join me in my attempt to unify this nation. As I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, the KKK is not coming to hurt African Americans. The U.S. military is not going to be rolling down our streets with tanks to massively deport illegal immigrants. Women are not going to be touched in undesirable manners no more than when the disgusting types touched them in the first place. The Secretary has conceded. The President is working with the President-elect for a peaceful transfer of power, and the nation voted on Election Day. Otherwise, Mr. Moore, I will have no other choice but to call upon all citizens who supported Mr. Trump, and anyone who finds your attempt at attacking our democracy to take to the streets in peaceful protest to peacefully contest the protesters you are egging on to put an end to this disgrace to the cause of our democracy in which you yourself are leading, sir. If we agree on nothing, Mr. Moore, I cannot and you cannot take responsibility as to what will happen when protesters on both sides stand opposed. However, what I can say on this day is that I reached out to you in the hopes of putting a stop to this possible forthcoming tragedy that you yourself will not be able to hide from, sir, no matter how many safe space pins your supporters hand out. Mr. Moore, I'm ready when you are, brother. Email me at joe@joerossano.com and I'll come and meet you. Otherwise, you will not be without responsibility as to what lies in the days to come if you, who are old enough to know better, at the very least don't consider my kind and sincere request. And I can no longer ask my fellow citizens to stand idly by while protest, riots break out in the streets. We'll be right back for the summary segment.
I'm a mover and a shaker, and I'm everything you're not. I'm the winner, you're the loser, and I'll take you for all you got.
Welcome back to the summary segment. You know, Mr. Moore, I hope this gets to you, which I have a feeling it will. You know, this broadcast may have seemed unfriendly, but I can tell you, Mr. Moore, it's friendly, sir. It is. Because I want you to ask yourself this. You were a filmmaker, a story writer. Where does this story end, Mr. Moore? Where does it end? Because I can tell you this, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, no matter how many protesters you bring, sir, at the end of the day, Donald Trump is getting inaugurated. He's going to be president. That's it, and that's that. Now, I want you to consider this very, very strongly. It's easy to break windows. It's easy to start fires when those windows and those fires don't strike back. If you think about your protesters, they are in most cases a bunch of young people, okay, who just days ago needed safe spaces because they were crying. They needed crayons, hot chocolate, and trauma dogs. Who are Donald Trump supporters? Think about this, Mr. Moore. Just about every police officer in the United States, just about every war veteran, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, etc., the Border Patrol, okay? What do you really think is going to happen to your supporters when Donald Trump supporters really consider striking back? They're going to run for cover, and you're going to be standing there by yourself with, again, no place to hide, Mr. Moore. And then what are you going to do? Mr. Moore, again, what I am trying to do here, okay, is I want to put a peaceful end to this nonsense. Look, we voted, okay? Again, Mr. Trump won Florida, he won Ohio, he won Pennsylvania, he pierced the blue wall, he won Wisconsin, he won Michigan. Now, what are you going to tell folks in Michigan? That their vote didn't count? That the state of Michigan didn't matter? They're probably going to take that statue of you in Flint down now, aren't they? Mr. Moore, I'm trying to get you out of this. I'm trying to help you. Because it is a zero-sum game, sir. Your protests are not going to stop Mr. Trump from being inaugurated and taking the White House. You got to know that. You got to know better than that. And let me ask you, Mr. Moore, okay? Two guys that are in their late 40s, which I assume you probably are. We may be a year or two older than each other. Mr. Moore, do you really want these kids to get hurt, sir? Really? Does this matter that much to you? That to see our citizens on hand-on-hand combat? Although, as you noticed, I, as well as you, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, we did call for peaceful protests on both sides. Mr. Moore, you and I know that that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, sir. All it's going to take is for one person to get victimized, one window to break, one fire to start, and then it's going to be pandemonium. It's going to be civil war, which you started. You did. You and George Soros and the rest of the left who were out there protesting started this. Now, let me make this very, very clear. I've got no problem with folks walking down the streets, carrying signs, screaming, "He's not my president. God bless you. That's your First Amendment right." I will never, including just you, Mr. Moore, I will never try to silence anyone. But breaking windows, starting fires, attacking people, can't do it. Now, I'm going to end this way. I'm going to speak to you and the rest of the folks that support you. Mr. Moore, get a grip. Donald Trump does not care about gay marriage. Do you forget that he's from Queens, New York? He spent his entire life in New York City, Mr. Moore. Gays and lesbians everywhere. He doesn't care about gay marriage. He's not going to ask that the Supreme Court ban gay marriage because he doesn't care about that. Donald Trump's a business guy. He's going to discuss NAFTA with Mexico. He's going to try to work out better trade deals. He's going to try to create jobs. Abortion and the LGBT community, etc., is not something that he cares enough about to try to stop. He doesn't. I mean, you've heard him now when it comes to health care. You know, he's not saying repeal and replace. All of a sudden, now it sounds like amend. He wants to keep pre-existing conditions and let college kids stay on their parents' policies longer. That's what all presidents do. You know, do you see, is Guantanamo Bay closed 8 years later? No. I'm telling you right now, a lot of things that you think are wrong, okay? As the same, a lot of the things that white people thought when President Obama was elected were wrong, okay? The Black Panthers didn't come and get anybody. Black people didn't hurt white people every day, okay? I mean, Donald Trump doesn't want these protests. He doesn't want people to get hurt. He told his supporters to stop it. Any one of Donald Trump's supporters who hurt anyone, the president-elect said on 60 Minutes, knock it off. Stop it. He's not even taking the salary. Give him a chance, Mr. Moore. Give him a chance. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Joe Rossano Show. We're down to earth, Mr. Moore, and brutally honest. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America. And we'll see you next time.
I'm a mover